I mean, the whole entrance, there were so many dramatic entrances. It was like the Met Gala or something. It was crazy.
Every episode of this show is just Daemon being banished at the end and then returning at the next one.
Dancing. They were almost humping.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of We Need to Talk About, a weekly show from Digital Spy where we speak about the biggest TV moments in the world, and this week that has to be House of the Dragon episode 5. This week I'm your host, Ali, and today I'm joined by Emma, Janet and Gabriella. We all have a lot we want to talk about, but the big conversation topic from this episode of House of the Dragon had to be the wedding, the green wedding, if you like. So let's jump in straight away and dig into some of our favourite moments from there. Emma and Janet, do you want to talk us through maybe kind of what stood out to you, or maybe
what is going on
from this absolutely crazy scene?
I think let's just put it out there. Game of Thrones, House of Dragons, they don't really have a good representation. They don't have a good track record for weddings. That's what I'm trying to say. We had the red wedding, now we've got the green wedding. Sir Criston... Don't get married
in Westeros is the key, I think.
Right.
Is the thing.
Sir Cristen Cole, what happened? Oh.
I know. I think we are going to have to break out the Cristen Cole stuff almost separately because he just had such an episode. But yeah, the wedding, obviously, it was quite a busy episode, and then just when you thought it couldn't get any busier, the last 10 minutes were just absolutely bananas. Obviously, the whole episode sort of was setting up Rhaenyra's marriage to Laenor, and then the kind of episode ends with what I think was intended to be their like pre-wedding dinner, and obviously things go awry. We have some amazing entrances from House Velaryon, then Daemon, then Alicent, obviously, and then the dance scenes happen, and then obviously that final moment happens. What was everyone's sort of like? What moment from the wedding were you kind of the most agog by?
I think before the big ta-da with Sir Criston Cole, the moment that really had a lot of impact for me was Alicent's entrance. Like her whole, you could see not even just in what she wears in terms of the green, meaning that Hightowers are ready for war. It's all about the way she carries herself. This is an Alicent we haven't seen before. This is a confidence and a surety that we've not seen coming from this character before. So when she walks in with that kind of defiance, that look that she gives to Cirrus, that look that she gives Rhaenyra, you can even see in Rhaenyra's eyes that she feels uncomfortable by this newfound confidence. She's uncertain in that kind of relationship, even though Alicent hasn't always been the queen, but she's been the queen for quite some time at this point. Rhaenyra's always kind of felt in control of that situation, of that friendship, and now things are on the other foot.
Time that Alicent calls her stepdaughter.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a really poignant.
I'm putting you in your place, like you are subservient to me. I am the queen. You are my stepdaughter. So I thought that was quite an interesting dynamic shift.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole entrance, there were so many dramatic entrances. It was like the Met Gala or something. It was crazy. I loved it, for fashion reasons. Alicent looked great, but like the timing she chose, she left them waiting with that empty chair next to Viserys, and everyone was obviously very aware that she wasn't there. And then she turns up right in the middle of his speech, and he has to stop midway, and everyone turns to look at her. And I just thought that was such an interesting power move, because it's showing Viserys's weakness as well, that he can't even hold the room with his wedding speech, his father of the bride speech. His wife comes in and makes this dramatic entrance, and as Janet said, the green dress meant a lot more. It was a signifier of I'm ready for battle, I'm ready for war. So I mean, she chose her moment well, I'm pretty sure.
100%.
Yeah, it was that obviously, like, when we maybe at some point we can talk about the strong family's role in this episode, but when Larys turns to Harwin and is like, and what does, like, they're so sassy, he's like, and what does green mean for the Hightowers? And Harwin's like, it means they're going to war. Like, they obviously they know it all, and that scene, like you said, there's so many cool moments, but I think something that stood out to me in that moment is the eye contact she makes with the other Hightowers. Like, they see her come in green, they stand up, they're like, it's suddenly this moment of like, this family, the Targaryen family that she's kind of been forging, aren't really there to support her. They maybe don't really care about her, but her real family is there. And I thought that was a really interesting kind of like realignment of Alicent's like allegiances almost. Like suddenly she's reformed that.
Especially because previously she was like, I feel so alone. I feel like I've got no one. And that was really her sinking into that kind of depression that she has. But she's really taken ownership. She's taken hold of the situation. She's like, I'm not going down. This is how I'm going to play it. And the fact that she already knows that she can behave this way with Viserys, like you said, it only heightens his weakness. Like, how do you have the balls to do that with your king husband? How? But yet she does.
Other moments, I guess, so not only the Alicent of it all, but I guess the other big, well, there's so much in the wedding scene, but obviously we have Daemon's late entrance, just like kind of swanning in. I saw lots of people on Twitter being like, every episode of this show is just Daemon being banished at the end and then returning at the next one.
I love like how little he has to say as well. Like he just walks in silently and they just like, oh yeah, get a chair for him.
Yeah,
like...
so funny. What did we all make of like him and Rhaenyra's? Because this is her wedding, if not her wedding itself, like this is all part of the wedding celebration, right? And here they are like dancing together in the middle of the room.
Dancing, they were almost humping. Let's just put it out there. They almost just crawled all over each other. I don't know what they were planning to do there. I can't believe they did. Well, I can. It's House of the Dragons. But with all those people around them, come on.
They got swept up in the moment.
Oh yeah.
People looks at you like that.
What a love story.
But it's almost like as well, they're both like so they're completely matched. They mirror each other and they're both like so arrogant and cocky. Like they know they're drawing attention to themselves, but they don't care because they're like, oh, we can get away with this, you know. They're very aware of their high status, and I think they didn't care.
It's great that you said that they are mirroring each other, because it was like they were both calling each other's bluff. They were playing chicken, like who's going further at this moment, and Rhaenyra just daring him to almost propose to her there and then. They're just ready to blow the whole thing to the waters. Like, what?
Yeah, I saw some people like, because obviously that moment before the kind of fight breaks out, there's the scene where the line from Rhaenyra is like, isn't this what she's there? Obviously they're speaking in High Valyrian, which is like their little special language that no one else understands, which is very funny. And that conversation where she's like, you know, isn't this what you're supposed to do? Like, come on then, like take me away to Dragonstone, marry me now. Like you have a weapon on you, don't you? Like cut through my father's Kingsguard. She throws the gauntlet down, and I read that as not only is she does kind of, I think, would probably go along with it, but also she's at this point of frustration. She's like, I'm now in a position where I'm marrying someone else. I've gone through all of this, and you haven't acted. You've kind of strung me along to a certain extent. Are you going to do the thing you've been threatening to do for however many years, or are you just, like you said, Janet, playing a game of chicken? So Cristen Cole and his journey and his kind of many flaws. Emma, do you want to talk me through kind of what stood out to you about Cristen Cole in this episode, and kind of the moments that you think kind of will give us an inkling, and maybe could have told us what was going to happen at the end, but maybe not?
Oh, I mean, bless him, poor guy, right? Like he's been through it. Like, I mean, for me, apart from the obvious end scene, the boat scene with him and Rhaenyra really stood out to me. And just, you know, I don't think we obviously knew that he was taking a risk already, but I don't think we fully realized how much of a huge risk this was and how much it was impacting his life. And he really like just pours his heart out in this scene and tells her, you know, this is the only thing I had left to my name, and that's gone now because we slept together. And it was just kind of gut-wrenching that Rhaenyra was kind of just toying with him and was kind of just saying, you know, I can't run away with you. I've got the throne. And, you know, it kind of does really show how much Rhaenyra is obsessed with the Iron Throne and having that crown, because there's been plenty of opportunities where she could have turned it down. You know, she could have handed the reins over to Daemon. She could have handed it over to her new younger brother, to go off with this man who she supposedly loves. but clearly doesn't love enough. But yeah, I was just kind of watching that and my heart was just like breaking for him. But yeah, interesting where it's going to go forward. Obviously, the beans have been spilled now to certain people in King's Landing. So yeah, we shall see where this goes in the future.
It felt a bit like 500 Days of Summer-y to me. It was like, yeah, we fucked, and he was like, I love you, run away with me. And
yeah.
What?
It was a little bit more for him than it was for her.
Yeah.
It's interesting as well because, like Emma, like you said, this was the one thing he had to his name, and it was quite refreshing to see the idea of chastity being used against a male character protagonist.
Yeah.
Because obviously we had this whole conversation between Alicent and Rhaenyra in the previous episode about, her sullying herself and nobody wanting her. So it was nice to see that kind of flipped onto a male character. I did feel bad for him to a certain extent because, again, like we talked about last week, the power dynamic in this relationship is completely unbalanced and it's ruined his life.
Yeah. I mean,
I do wonder how much of him almost proposing to Rhaenyra was more about him trying to keep his reputation. Like, obviously he has feelings for her, but how much of that was him trying to hold on to his reputation and make this sinful, dirty moment into something more pure because it's love? Or is it? How much of that was his feelings versus his need to feel okay with what they've done?
I do think, like, I half agree with you, Janet, in that I think he does have feelings for her and loves her, but I disagree and think he's a massive idiot. Like, huge dumb himbo behaviour from Cristen Cole. He's like, we go to Essos and I can grow oranges. And she's like, I'm Rhaenyra Targaryen. Like, I ride dragons and I'm the queen of the Iron Throne. Like, in what absolute fantasy world is she going to be like, yeah, it's just... I couldn't believe when he was saying it to her and the look on her face. I was like, no, you idiot. Like, in what universe is this ever going to fly? Like, obviously she wants the throne. It's the throne of the Iron King. Like, it was just, it made me laugh so much that he was like, there's a
bushel of oranges.
I'm not going to use the phrase that someone else in the episode uses about him later on because it probably gets censored on YouTube. But the man, I couldn't believe it when he was like, let's go to Essos together. And she looks at him like, there's pity in her face. Like, no, like that isn't, there is no world in which this relationship was ever going to be that, right? Like, maybe for a brief moment, but
I mean, that doesn't happen in the world of Game of Thrones. Like, what, we're not going to have a happy ever after, are we? Let's face it.
Did people... Okay, so we have that moment, and then obviously the kind of culmination of that situation is later on in the wedding episode.
A stress reaction just thinking about it.
Yeah, because obviously what happens obviously later on in the episode is that I can't think what Laenor's he's called Joffrey. Joffrey pulls him to one side after kind of figuring out that Cristen is Rhaenyra's paramour, as he calls it, and says to him, has this weird conversation where he's like, I know your secret, so now here's, and I'm going to tell you mine, which is a really bad decision to have made.
Weird.
Really bad.
It was like a really poor threat. Like, you keep my secret and I'll keep yours. Okay.
But it was kind of just like, I feel like for him, like he was saying it as if like, oh, it's protection for each of us. But I feel like he was just enjoying the gossip, to be honest. He just wanted to, get in with the fun.
It's his gossip. Don't share your own gossip with people. Don't go up to this guy and be like, hey, I know your secret. Do you want to know mine? Like, it was just really bad decisions all around.
Again, another stupid man in this episode.
Yeah, extremely. Love will do stupid things to you, it turns out. And then obviously, the episode ends with Cristen Cole beating the poor guy to death in this kind of like really
caved his face in.
It's really violent outburst.
I feel like it was just layer upon layer of emotions for Sir Cristen Cole, and then that moment was just like, no, I can't. There's no way I can take any more. I think he almost probably saw that as his reputation almost being outed. He doesn't even get what he wants with Rhaenyra. Alicent already knows, and he feels shameful about that. And it was just this bubbling rage until he exploded all over Joffrey's face.
It's like he wanted to be punished.
That was a bit weird.
Not like that. I was going to say, it's like he wanted to be punished because, like, before we see him, when he does confess to Alicent, he says, just kill me. Like, I've broken my oath. just take my life, I'm done. And obviously before with Rhaenyra, he had the conversation, he was saying, you know, so you just want me to be your whore, essentially. And it's like nothing's going right for him. And I think he's just confused and angry.
Yeah.
So he just kind of lashed out in the most horrendous way. But it's kind of just like he wants to be punished. Like he wants this whole ordeal to be over.
The third thing we kind of want to talk about from this episode generally is the kind of like the relationship between Laenor and Joffrey, our first kind of big confirmed gay couple on House of the Dragon, and kind of how we feel like this was handled in this episode and how it might be handled going forward. I know that Gabriella, you and I had a conversation yesterday about how we felt the show had handled Laenor and Joffrey, but and obviously it introduces them and it introduces Joffrey, which is it's cool to have kind of gay characters or main characters in the show, but obviously by the end of the episode we've already lost one of them, which is not maybe the kind of best look for the show. Did you want to talk a little bit about your feelings on that, Gabriella? And then I can jump in.
I mean, again, the whole reason I got spoiled is because I read an article. I stopped as soon as I hit the spoiler, but it was an article in the LA Times about Game of Thrones homophobia and the idea that it has the only kind of out main gay characters, and the murder is one of them, but also the kind of underlying thing about how, and it touches on something we talked about last week, which is that gay and lesbian relationships don't really make sense in this world because sex is about procreating, is about carrying on the line, and obviously that biologically wouldn't happen. And so it's interesting to see that, you know, I don't even know who Joffrey was. They introduced him. I don't remember anything about him. And then he's dead. He's murdered. And the other thing that struck me was that the most, at least as far as I can recall, the kind of most explicit violence has been against a gay man and a pregnant woman. And to me, at this point in the show, that doesn't sit well with me anymore. And I think, you know, when the showrunners initially had said, you know, the thing about the C-section being like, we're going to show all kinds of range of what birthing and motherhood is like. I haven't seen that. You know, we saw that C-section. We haven't seen a single other, not that I particularly like watching birthing scenes, but we haven't seen any other ones. We've only ever seen Alicent as a mom, and she does not look like she wants to be dealing with those babies.
No, just toss them aside.
Take this. Which, like, I get, it's fine, I understand. But so to me, at this point, I kind of felt like, what is the show saying about? And it's not even that I think it is doing it on purpose. I think it's just a lack of
thought beyond it.
Yeah, or like the characters that have the most to lose and most at stake and most vulnerabilities are the most interesting characters, and so that they become manipulated, right, as plot kind of fodder. And it just so happens that it's going to end up being these people who are in positions of having less power. And because Game of Thrones continues the sort of world that we live in terms of its social power dynamics, that's who ends up at the chopping block, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think it didn't sit totally well with me. And I also think it's quite interesting that you've got, I don't understand why Joffrey said anything to Sir Criston. Yeah. And that, I think, is the thing that is the biggest sticking point, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't, like, it feels like they needed something to get Sir Criston into this isolated
situation.
So then he can align himself with Alicent, or Alicent can kind of pull him into her corner. And they figured out a way to make that work that sort of works. You know, I feel like it didn't quite gel totally for me as a sort of character motivation or arc. And also because if Joffrey was just dumb and like did this shit all the time, and we saw him being a terrible gossip and sharing shit, fine. But we don't get any of that, so we don't actually know that if this was just like a one-off stupid mistake or he just is an idiot.
I don't know whether he genuinely thought that if he not showed his cards, but if he told Sir Criston that he had something on him, then he would get some sort of upper hand. Like, he would want to keep that secret so badly.
But it doesn't make sense, because when you were already said, I'm fine with it, you're fine with me, we're good. So there was what was the impetus?
Because he didn't even know what was going on between him and Laenor. So then I don't know. House of Dragons, it's Spain.
Rhaenyra's cool with us continuing as we are. Like, don't worry about it.
I think it's interesting. Like I've said to you before. I think I bristle against the idea of like, obviously, like the bury your gays trope is like a thing in TV writing. People talk about the way in which like kind of like you said, Gabriella, like the often characters who are already on the margins are the easiest characters for the narrative to dispose of for its own gains, right? So like if someone's only a little bit involved, then you can kill them off and da. I kind of bristle against the idea that like you can't kill or harm queer characters, because I think in a lot of stories violence plays a big part of like the stakes of the story, and if we want queer people to be a big part of the story, then they need to have stakes, and if they need to have stakes, that means they need to be able to die. Like I think that's just good fiction. But I think the issue with House of the Dragon and Joffrey's character is what you've said, is his lack of character before he gets the chop. Like if we even have 2 episodes where we get introduced to him, and we've still got Laenor, that's the thing. Like we still have queer characters. But
you have it in isolation. Do you know what I mean? You don't see their life together. You don't see any of the romance. You don't see any of the complexities with it. I don't know if it's, like you said, because we didn't get enough, not necessarily just from Laenor, but any decent queer representation beforehand. And so that's why that feels really awkward and really unsettling.
A little health update for poor old Viserys, who's not in a good way. Janet, I know you have the lowdown on the latest with Viserys. Do you want to talk to us about what's happening with him?
Oh, he just really is falling apart, isn't he? Not just like his actual home life, his reign, like physically, he is just falling to pieces. And I know that there was a lot of speculation before about whether or not he's got grayscale, which was that disease that you can catch by being infected by other people with grayscale, and it turns your insides all like literally scaly, like you're scaly on the outside, it kills you. But that's not what's happening with Cirrus. It has been confirmed that he has leprosy, of all things.
I shouldn't make that face. They just, it's very, they make it gross in the show.
Yeah, they do.
They do. I love that scene when he goes to visit the Valerians, and they're like, "Are you well?" And he's like, "Yeah."
I'm well.
Like,
and
no,
he's sweating,
not.
And he's like almost hunched over.
2 things I thought were interesting. But Rhaenys's like genuine look of concern, like not just in a power hungry way, but like that's my cousin, he's not well.
She's also, like almost taken aback, isn't she?
She offers him wine and he says no, which is the first time in the course of this show that he's ever said no to wine. Like
that's a really good point.
Things must be bad, basically, if he's turning down the goblet.
I do feel like it's a reflection of what we saw when he cut his finger on the throne, and I feel like I think I read an article the other day which said that it's literally almost like a representation of how the struggles of the throne affect the body and affect the soul. And like, he's a young man with inside, but he's just falling apart. But I also feel like it's the throne rejecting him again. Like, you are not a good king. You are not good for the kingdom. Your reign isn't that good. Like, I think it's the throne telling him, you got to go.
I do think he has that kind of sad conversation with his new hand, where he's like, what do you think they're going to say about me when I die? And he's basically, well, you reigned in a time of peace. And like,
but also you can still reign effectively in a time of peace, but you've just been manipulated and shuffled and nod your head to the wrong people.
Did we see, I'm not massive, I didn't read the books. And as you know, I don't remember anything that happened in Game of Thrones. But I don't feel like his reign has been, aside from the fact that like he basically sort of facilitated the death of his wife, and then his child died. And that wasn't the baby dying's not his fault, right? I feel like he was chosen by the group of whatever they are, the lords, to become king, and he took it and he did the best that he could in a time of peace anyway. So I feel like
it's not so much that his reign is terrible, it's the fact that he's not making any of his own choices. Like, your reign may not be a complete trash, but you're not making any choices whatsoever. You're being manipulated by everybody around you. Even Alicent now is getting the high ground with him. Like, she's able to have to sway over him in a way that she shouldn't really. He should be able to be discerning enough to be like, okay, I'm making my choice because not I'm being shepherded by other people.
It's very Macbeth to me, right? It's this idea of like, you're given just enough information to make these decisions that bite you in the ass.
Yeah. I mean, this is the thing, right? I think the thing with Viserys is, I think that conversation he has with Lionel Strongbow, like you said, is the most illuminating. Like he's like got leeches all over him. We see it's when we get that the shot of his arm and the kind of the illness there, and he says, "Will I be remembered as a good king?" And yeah, Lionel lays it out. Lionel says, like, what is more important to you? Like you won't be remembered because you're a peacetime king, and people don't remember kings that don't act and do dramatic things, but you led a good life, and is that not enough? And Viserys, I don't think, has an answer to him in that moment, which I thought was interesting, because I think I've always thought of Viserys as a king in the show who is content just like doing his best for his family, and that's enough. But in that moment, it's like, oh, maybe there would have been another path for him at some point in which he would have been a more dramatic leader. The only thing we've seen him be kind of ineffective in terms of action about was around the Stepstones and taking so long to respond that Daemon and Corlys have to go out there and basically do it all on their own, and then that ends with he acts too slow and Daemon wins that fight. So that's the kind of the big campaign policy thing that he fucks up during his reign. Okay, so the next thing, or maybe the final thing, or the next thing we want to talk about with House of the Dragon episode 5 was kind of the state of play that we're in as we reach the halfway point in the show. We know that in the next episode we are getting a bigger time jump, and we're getting some key players having new actors take on the role. So we just wanted to kind of like have a quick think about what that means and what we're expected to see. Janet, do you want to talk me through who's stepping into the roles, who's coming on new, and what we should be thinking about?
Yes, so Olivia Cook will be playing Alicent, and then we've got Emma Darcy who will be playing Rhaenyra. I do think it's really weird that they need this dramatic change, but people like Sir Criston Cole don't. I always find that a little bit weird, but hey-ho. I think how we leave the characters in this episode, where they are emotionally, where they are with each other in terms of their relationship, definitely festers over the next time jump, and we see a very, very different Alicent to the one that we've known so far. I love Alicent. She's different. She's definitely different. I really love Rhaenyra, so I almost want her to get away with everything.
I think I'm really excited to see Olivia Cook and Emma Darcy step into these roles. I think it's been fun talking to different people over the past few weeks, because I really think Millie Alcock and Emily Carey are just phenomenal. Like they really, Millie Alcock especially for me is like, there are episodes where she is carrying the show. Like her performance is so interesting and weird. She kind of toys this line between like teenage girl and nearly a queen. Like she's doing a lot. So I think they should be applauded, and I'm kind of sad to see them go.
Yeah, I'm even sadder to see Emily Carey. Not sadder. I love Rhaenyra. I love Millie Alcock as Rhaenyra, but it's really sad to see Emily Carey go as well, in the sense of she's literally just stepped into this really interesting, intriguing character, and I love the way that she's been able to switch from this really docile, almost really innocent character, and then become almost calculated and vengeful. Like she always had this in her, and it's so great to see the way Emily Carey has kind of manifested that within I've forgotten her character's name all of a sudden.
Alicent,
thank you. But yeah, I'm looking forward to what's to come.
But I mean, what an episode to go out on! Like that was a spectacular, chaotic episode. So it was a great one for that to be there. You know, sort of final bow out, or will it be? Are there going to be flashbacks in the future? We'll see. But one thing, I mean, you might know a bit more about this, Janet, but I read interviews of the cast saying that they didn't speak to each other about how they were going to play the roles. So I thought that was really interesting. So I'm kind of intrigued to see, as we age up and the new cast members come in, I'm really intrigued to see how the characters develop and how they differ from the younger incarnations.
Gabriella, where's your head at with the new
I'm so
cast?
excited for the Alicent Rhaenyra dynamic. I love their friendship / maybe more / antagonism, frenemy. Like, I think it's nice to see two female characters with such a layered, complex relationship. And I'm excited to see how that shifts. In a way, it's a shame that we don't see it because we're getting this jump, but it'll be nice to kind of delve more into all of the different layers of these like former childhood best friends. Because in any other universe, right, like you could plop them into like Mean Girls, you could plop them into, you know, normal people, you could plop them into all of these different sort of contemporary shows about growing up. And I think those dynamics still play. And so it's going to be interesting in this setting that has traditionally been more interested in male relationships and power dynamics and nuance, and the women are sort of flattened a little bit more. It'll be nice to see this more nuanced, full dynamic of a relationship develop.
You are going to love the first episode of their jump up.
I will say on that note, if you, the viewer, have not done this, I would encourage you to look at Janet, our dear Janet here, her interview with Emma Darcy and Olivia Cook, because in that interview, Emma Darcy in particular says some really interesting stuff about Alicent and Rhaenyra's relationship, and how they how when they were children, how they their interactions, they were playing at the idea of like romantic relationships and how they kind of feel this sense of ownership over each other. And Emma Darcy is just clearly very smart, and they encapsulate a lot of that kind of really eloquently. So I would definitely recommend watching that. So that's everything we needed to talk about this week at Digital Spy for House of Dragon episode 5. Let us know about what you thought of the things we raised, if there are any moments that stood out to you. This episode had so many kind of new characters, new moments, interesting dynamics. So I'm sure there's stuff we missed. So let us know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and we shall see you right here next week when we talk about House of Dragon episode 6. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.